Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Here we'll see what is Flutter authorization header. Actually, this authorization header we'd be using with the Dio package. How to generate this, how to save this, what it has to do with the REST API, and how REST API uses this header, authorization header or token during or accessing other endpoints in our REST API, and how to view and authorize this, not authorize actually, how to confirm this authorization from Postman as well. And at the same time, we'll see how Laravel and the Sanctum package play a role in this together. And at the end, we'll see how does a complete API request works with authorization header within Dio and Flutter app. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this is our app. Actually, once this app I log in, actually it's going to create a token, and that token actually we use for authorization or header. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in, and it would create a token which we'll see in front end, and that token actually comes from backend. We'll also see how it comes from and how it's generated. So let's go ahead and log in. So I'm going to click on this, and it should help me to log in, and I am already logged in. So as I've logged in, actually over here at the top, I have already printed my authorization header or access token, which is this one. Now how it is generated. First, we want to go ahead and take a look in our sign-in controller. So this is our sign-in controller. Remember, in sign-in controller, we have a method which is called handle sign-in. So all it does, it takes user input, which means the user email and password, and after that actually it calls a method. So over here we do a lot of data processing. It doesn't matter, but the core part is we take email, and of course we also take the password, but somehow we are not saving the password in our database, so we don't pass that. Anyway, so over here we have this method which is called async post data. Now this on what it does actually, so whatever the information we grab from the user, we convert it to an object and then pass it to an endpoint, or we have an API call which is login API. Now login API or login method actually, so it has an endpoint, and the endpoint actually takes the data. So it takes the user input data like the password and email, things like that, and post it on the backend. So this is our backend. In our backend, we have an endpoint which is called login. Now this endpoint is actually same as front end endpoint. So as you see here, we say login, and on the backend we also have a login. And this method actually, this endpoint actually refers to a method in this case, which is create user. So it helps us to create user and login user. Anyway, so we pass avatar type, OpenID name, and email from the backend. We grab all the information, and after grabbing it actually, well, part of the information we save in the database, and as we save, after saving the information, we generate a token. Now as you see over here, it says that create token. Of course this token has been created with Laravel Sanctum package. So once we created the token, well, we also update our database, and at the same time we return this response in our front end. So as the response is returned, we have this token included. So that means that once we get the response back in our Flutter front end from this method, which is login, as you can see, we return the response. So whatever we get from here, from this method, we return it, and after returning it, actually we check the response type, which is 200, and which is good, which means the successful method call, and then it gives us a token, and as you can see, access token. So this access token actually we save in our local storage using shared preferences, and as you can see here, we have a method which is set string, because access token mostly is string, so we save it in our shared storage. We save it in our shared preferences, and as we save it, we give it a key. So this is our key. Using this key we can save it, and at the same time we'll be able to retrieve it. So that means that actually this method over here, so used for authorization, that's why we saved it. All right, okay, great. Now that means that when we make a request to our server, to our endpoint, we have to send this one back, and if we do that, Then over here, because we are also using Sanctum for authentication, it could authenticate automatically. Okay, whatever the token you're passing me, that's a valid token, and if so, go ahead and visit this. All right, so that means that our next job is to create a mechanism where we can send this. Until now, we can save this, which we did. We can also remove it. But now we have to have a mechanism where we can retrieve it and then send it back to the server, to the Sanctum for authorization. Now to do that, first I'm going to open up our HTTP util class over here, and inside this we have this post method. Now so far our post method is pretty simple. We are not passing any headers. In general, the token you see over here, this should be passed in header as authorization. So we don't have any headers parameter over here. Oh, it's fine, we're going to create one. But first we need to create a mechanism. That mechanism would retrieve back this token and then use it in the header. For this reason, I'm going to create a method and I'll call it get authorization header. Authorization header. Now over here, I'm going to create a variable and I'll call it headers. And it would be a map type data. So the key is string, the value is dynamic over here, and this is initialized as an empty map. Now inside this, I'm going to create another variable and I'll call it access token, this one. Now this access token would be coming from our global storage. Okay, we know that we need to import it. Let's go ahead and import it. Sometimes it doesn't recognize. If it not, then let's try it one more time. Yes, it did. And then over here, storage service, and then we'll have get user token. All right, now we don't have this get user token. We have to have this method to get this token. Now this token, of course, is in our service storage class. So let's go ahead and head over to our service storage class, which is this one, this class. So we will create a method that returns us the token. So here, let's do that. So over here, we are going to create a method. The method name is get user token, this one. And inside this, we are going to return this one. Okay. So this is a method. We don't need to pass anything. We just simply know our key, like this is our key, right? So we can simply go ahead and remove that. Yeah, actually use that or remove that. And this key is coming from app constants. We know that. So just use this one inside and you're good to go. Now this one, the return type is a string. Because this is string, we know that. Well, if it exists, then go ahead and return it. Otherwise, return this empty one, which means return nothing. All right. So now let's go back to our HTTP util class over here. And as you can see, the arrow is gone. And then inside this, we're going to do like access token. Access token is not empty. We're going to check this one, whether it's empty or not. And this is the time where we set the key for these headers. How to do that? So over here we'll have headers. Now since this is a map, I can create any kind of key, because we just said the key is a string, but what kind of key is that? The key name, we didn't say that, and key name is authorization. And then over here, since this is a bearer token, so I'm going to send it here as bearer, and then inside this I'm going to send access token. All right. Well, I do think it doesn't need the curly braces, so let's get rid of that. And with this, we are good. Now, of course, this one, authorization, the spelling has to match this authorization, this tag, exactly the same. So if you make mistakes, it's not going to work. All right, so we created this method. So this method is going to get us authorization header, and now of course we want to return it. So here we're just simply going to go ahead and return headers. All right, so we need to specify the return type over here. Now this is a map, so let's go ahead and do that. So here we do map and string and the dynamic. All right, so return type could be nullable or empty, because we have this empty one, so you have to have this one. Okay, great. So our authorization header is ready. So now we can access to our storage and retrieve that and return it. So that means that now it's time to go ahead and use it. All right, to be able to use it, actually now we need to come inside this section, inside this async method. And since we are using Dio over here for our HTTP request, the Dio has an option which is actually called options object. Options, this one, as you can see. So it's coming from Dio package. And here you can create a variable and you can name it request options. Like this header is optional. Not every request needs headers. We can specify which request needs headers. All right, okay. Now in general, you'll create an object of options to it. So that's how it works. But if you want, actually, you can also pass options from here as well. If you need to, if you want to pass any kind of course, this one is also optional. So let's go ahead and create an object named options. Options. This is optional. So here we can say if option exists, then use this one. Otherwise, go ahead and create a new object. So the whole thing is optional. You get the idea. All right. Now request options, this one. Inside this, there is a property which is called, there should be a property, and that should be called headers actually. So this headers and actually this headers, they should be the same thing, and that's what we are talking about. So here we could say request options, and then we can create headers and then empty map. So the idea is whatever you're passing, if it has headers, use that one. Otherwise, create an empty map and assign to it. Okay, so far up to now it could be totally optional, and it could be all empty actually. All right, now here's the thing that we could do. Now we can call our get authorization header, this one. Now we know that this would return us, this method would return us a map. So here I'm going to create a map variable, and I'm going to call it string and dynamic, and then here we'll call it authorization, just like this. So whatever it returns, we're going to save it over here. And after that, here we will check if authorization not null. If it's not null, so we are going to actually save it. Save inside this request options. So here request options dot headers, and then here is a function which is called add all. Inside this we're gonna save authorization. All right, and after this we'll just have it like this. Let's see. Okay, so here we'd say our headers is not null. So that's how you wrap headers, retrieve the headers in Dio, and then assign it to this options object, which is request options. Now this is the time you need to pass them. So you can create a new variable over here inside this, and we are going to pass it. And how to pass it? Well, it's easy. One more time, use options and then use request options, the variable that we have created so far. Yeah, that's it. Let's see if we can reformat our code or not. Now with this it looks more readable. Okay, all right. Okay, good. So now that means that now if we go ahead and create a post request, that means that would be able to pass headers. So that also means that every time you go ahead and log in, you will have a new access token, because we know that every time we go ahead and log in, we have a new access token, and that access token would be retrieved over here. And then inside this post method, we can simply go ahead and assign it. And when you do the post method, it'd be sent back to the server. All right. So, well, now this is the time that we go ahead and create an endpoint. Now, to be able to create endpoint, we need to come to our directory where it says that APIs. Now inside this we are going to create a new class, new file, and we'll call it course API.dart. So inside this we are going to save all the API related to course over here. Now the first thing we want to do, you want to create a class. So let's go ahead and do that, and here we do course API. And inside this we are going to call this HTTP post method, this method. So let's come over here. We can close some of them. We don't need this const. Also don't need the service storage. Application page we don't need. All right, great. Now inside this we could simply create a method. So the method name is course list. And inside this we'll call http util dot post. All right, now inside this we need to pass our endpoint. So what's our endpoint? So we can say endpoint is API, and endpoint name is course list. We know that because if you come over here, so this is our endpoint. By the way, you might see this one. You can ignore this. I'm just doing some test. So remove that. It doesn't matter because I know you guys haven't done it. So it's okay. I'm going to remove this. Of course, you didn't have it anyway. Now we know that this is going to return us something. And what is it going to return us? We can verify that very quickly. Whatever it returns, we can save it in a variable and we'll call it response. All right, okay. Now, well, there are a lot more things to do. One of the things we could do right away, we can come inside this and actually call it, because we are ready to call it. Well, even before that, I think we need to make a little bit of change over here. So here we do like this, since this is an API request, and then over here we could add async modifier. Okay, because since this is an API request, it has to wait. All right, so that's why we have to have this one. Now for us over here, we can, right after this, actually we can just simply go ahead and do like this. print response dot to string. Let's save it. Now if you come inside this, you can go ahead and call it. So here we could call await and course API dot course list. Now let's first put async tag modifier and then import it. And let's see what is going to happen. So instance member cannot be accessed using static method. This is the way we are accessing it. Before this type, actually we need to say static. That's what it was trying to say. All right. Okay, great. Now, okay, let's go ahead and call this. Let's restart it. Done. Beautiful, awesome. You see, our request is already back to front end, and this is awesome. So this request over here is exactly same as the request over here, the one you have seen. Let's go ahead and see. Okay, all right. So Laravel thumbnail, lesson 10, price 22, 30, 330 and 3. So over here, the last one, we do the same thing, 33, 30. So that means that this is the very first time it's working, and it's beautiful.